You're a comic book creator. You've created a mini-series, an ongoing series. You are very passionate about the story that you have created, and yet you're nervous. How do I hook readers into this? Well, it's easy. You gotta do it in the first issue. The number one issue is the most important issue of your series, whether you believe it or not. Don't give me this bullcrap that issues 5 and 6 are where the story really gets good, because if issue number 1 isn't good, I'm not going to be reading issues number 5 and 6. You feel? Issue number 1 is where your potential audience gives you a tryout. They trust you they give you their trust and say, hey, give me a new experience. And if you fail in giving them that new experience, they're not coming back for number 2. So how do you make number 1 the hit comic that you need it to be? Let's talk about that. Drunk Talk. Most writers, me included, will say, how do I cram in all the story beats and character development in the first issue in order to create an emotion within the reader that makes them want to continue reading this book? It's super hard. It's almost impossible, we say. I've said it several times, and yet I think I found out how to do it within a 24-page constraint. So how do I make readers continue reading my book? You need to have a balance between story development and character development, and it all needs to happen within that very first issue.
But Tyler, how do I do this all in 24 pages? It's not possible.
Actually, it is, and we're going to dissect one of my favorite comic books, Nailbiter #1 by Joshua Williamson and Mike Henderson. They were able to cram all the right story beats and character developments in a 24-page issue, and we're going to dissect how they did it in the most perfect way so they could create a successful comic book series. Keep in mind, issue number 1 sold around 20,000 copies, and then each subsequent issue later had 14 to 15,000 sales every single issue. So clearly they had a good reader base because issue number 1 hooked enough readers to have them continue on reading the remainder of the series. And while we dissect this comic, remember there's going to be 2 elements that we're going to be constantly going back and forth with. Story development and character development. Having the right balance of each one is going to make your reader invested in your number 1 issue. So let's dissect Nailbiter #1. To begin with, the story immediately takes place with action. The police are outside of a home. The SWAT team kicks down the door, and bam, we are introduced to our first main character, Edward Warren, aka the Nailbiter. This scene is super chilling. We see Warren sitting down, shirtless, covered in blood, surrounded by dead bodies, and biting the nails off of one of his victims. We are also presented with a case file for dialogue, which explains how he is Buckaroo Butcher number 16. This is so important because it gives reader the impression that if he's the 16th, that means that there's at least 15 other serial killers in the story, and we now want to know more about these other serial killers, these other Buckaroo Butchers. So immediately within the first 2 pages, we are introduced to our main character and given hints at the story elements. The next main character we are introduced to is Finch. The reader catches him in a sensitive moment of trying to commit suicide. We now know that his character is going through some serious ish in his life, and we are now a bit emotionally invested in why he is wanting to kill himself. We then catch a phone call with a police officer named Carol, who we were introduced on the very first page as the man who caught the Nailbiter. He then proceeds to tell Finch that he has cracked the secret of the Buckaroo Butchers, all 16 of them that we know. So let's pause real quick. We now know that the story revolves around 16 serial killers, one of them being the Nailbiter. We have a police officer named Finch, who's friends with the man Carol, who caught the Nailbiter, the 16th serial killer, and that Carol has cracked the secret about all 16 Buckaroo Butchers. What that secret is, we as the reader don't know yet, and that's intriguing us to continue reading. What is this secret? By the way, all of this happens within the first 8 pages of the story. We're already given story development about the 16 serial killers. We're given knowledge about our main characters, the Nailbiter, Finch, who wants to commit suicide, and also Carol, who has cracked the secret to all 16 Buckaroo Butchers. All within the first 8 pages. And it's perfectly paced. Perfectly paced. But don't worry, even though we're only 8 pages in, we're about to get even more story development and character development in the following pages. So at this point in the story, it's important for the writer to establish and flesh out the characters even more. Since the main character of the series is Finch, it's important that the reader gets a glimpse into some of his backstory. So, we are presented with a flashback of Finch, with bloody hands, a man screaming at him, and in the background 2 officers helping another man who was bloody in the face, and they're all saying that he is dead, and that why did he do that? Clearly it looks like Finch crossed the line somewhere, went too far, killed a man, and now wants to kill himself because of it. And that entire flashback was done in one panel. One panel. That is nuts. So now that the reader knows a little more about Finch and we get some more character development, we're now going to go back into story development. We need to learn more about the setting of this series. So we're going to go into this town of Buckaroo. Our character Finch ends up in the town of Buckaroo, and this is the moment that the reader needs to learn about the butchers. So how does the writer do it? The writer does it by creating a store that celebrates and monetizes the fame of these serial killers. In this scene, we learn about the various butchers, such as the book burner, whose mask will be pivotal in the tension of the rest of this issue. We also learn that all these killers were born in Buckaroo, and that the last killer was Edward Warren, the Nailbiter. This scene only lasts 5 pages, but the reader was given so much information that it's now time to move back to more character development. The next 3 pages, we get to meet some of the townsfolk's kids, namely Alice, who we will see throughout the entire series, and some jocks who are bullying her. Finch decides to defend her and even beats them up, showing some more character development that he has a temper and is willing to fight whoever gets in his way. But he is ultimately stopped by Sheriff Crane, our third and final main character. We don't learn quite as much about Crane in this scene, except that she is the law. She is in charge, and she is not afraid to be in charge. What we also learn is that she knows where Carol is, the man Finch is supposed to meet in Buckaroo, the man who captured the Nailbiter. Now that we've gotten some serious character development from Finch and now Sheriff Crane, we're now going to switch back into story development. Are you seeing what the writers are doing? Constantly going on this teeter-totter of character development, story development, character development, story development, not pushing one super strong, giving balance to both elements. So this is where we get the final story development. We learn that Carol has gone missing, that Carol was obsessed with what makes Buckaroo so special in creating serial killers like the Nailbiter, and we learn one of the biggest twists of the story. The Nailbiter never went to jail and was found innocent at trial. We are then shown Finch and Crane driving, and this panel work is horrifying and amazing. In one panel, we see Finch looking out through the window, and he sees the book burner. It shows Finch again, but when we see the same panel of him looking outside, the killer is gone. The book ends with us seeing the Nailbiter holding a butcher's knife, covered in blood, and biting his nails. The last story element we are presented with is that the Nailbiter, the man who was arrested at the beginning of the book, is innocent, living in Buckaroo, and possibly knows where the missing Carol is, the man who captured him at the very beginning of the book. So, the reader is left with so many questions after this issue. To name a few, who are the Buckaroo butchers? How was the Nailbiter found innocent? What happened with Finch? Why did Finch see the book burner in the forest? Is there a connection between Buckaroo and people who become serial killers? And where is Carol? These are just a few of the questions that the writer leaves with us, the reader. So I know that was a lot to take in, but I wanted to showcase that it is possible to cram all of these story elements and character developments within a 24-page issue and to hook your reader within that first issue. To hook your reader within that first issue. The balance that you give between story development and character development is crucial, and it's something that I super struggle with, and after dissecting Nailbiter number 1 is something that I want to give my full attention to in the next series that I do. You see, if you try to only concentrate on one aspect, the other aspect is gonna lack, and your readers are not gonna get that emotional tie that comes when having both elements in your book. So here are some takeaways that we can learn from Nailbiter. One, don't be scared of short scenes. Some of these scenes happen in 2 pages, some of these scenes happen in 5 pages, some of these scenes happen in even 1 page. Okay, get the message across that you need, whether it's story development or character development, and then move on. You know, get rid of all this useless dialogue. Get rid of all of this useless, all of this useless panel work. It's not important. Okay, that flashback panel with Finch took 1 panel. That is insane that we were able to get so much character development and character story all within 1 panel. So, how do you get people hooked on your number 1? Have a balance of character development and story development. It might take a couple more drafts in your issue 1 script, but I promise you that if you're able to do this, you're going to succeed. Nailbiter number 1 is a perfect example of balancing both character development and story development, and I just hope that you guys exemplify it just like the way that I personally want to exemplify it in future comics that I write. Some of you guys know I got IBS, which means sometimes you just gotta poop, and sometimes at 5:30 you gotta poop, but also sometimes at 5:30 you're you're watching your kid and then you gotta poop. So, Grayson, say hi, bud. He's like, we've been in here for far too long. So thanks guys for watching. Remember to smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. Go check out the comic book, The Ghetto Dragon, currently on Indiegogo, and yeah, also thank you to my Patreons. Peace!